All right, these are for the Tigers who want to learn about technology, aka Tiger Tech, and this is my video for introducing blended learning. All right, I'm going to go through this as if this is the presentation that I'm giving you, that we haven't talked about it already. So why I love my blended learning classroom. My students are self-starters. They know exactly where to go. We build that habit in. They know where to go if they have a question. They can always go back to my videos. They're labeled. They know what topic each one is. Students get to move at their own pace. Some students will take longer than others to watch that video. Some will fly through it. It just depends on how quickly they pick up information that's given to them. And the kids like that because they're not being held back or they're not missing out on anything. Students get to interact with each other. I really believe that you have to build that into the process, because if you don't have some kind of interaction, it's not really blended learning. It's just technology individual learning. And we know that kids don't learn best just by working with themselves. So I've been working on a way to incorporate Kagan in there. I will include a few ideas in this video. You can kind of see how I do those questions. But if you kind of go with this and you have like more ideas about how to get Kagan in there, please share them with me. Students are engaged and responsible for their own learning. So we'll talk about in this presentation about actively watching the video and actively learning. And in order to be successful at the activities that I set up, they have to be actively watching. And so this makes them stay engaged, and just kind of initially the kind of showmanship of the technology at least gets them at first interested, but then the need for active learning and watching keeps them that way. Students complete formative activities throughout the lesson. If you use Zaption or Nearpod, they are set up to do that, but you can do that on a piece of paper too. You could have them completing a paper version of something while they're watching a video. And as you walk around, you can see how they're doing with that. So maybe they're completing a math problem, and as you're walking around, you notice like this pair or this individual student mess something up. You can talk to them right then and there, right? That's formative. The last thing is, I really believe this, that I have more time to build relationships and work with my students, because a lot of times things will get triggered that they are like, oh, that's like a really good question to ask because we learned about this in English and it's relating to this. And in a lecture, they'll ask it, but then no matter how much I would like it that everybody would care about the answer I give, or like what we discuss, they don't. And, maybe two tables are kind of getting unruly and some people are zoning out while I'm answering the student's question. That's a really good question. Well, with blended learning, the other students are still engaged in doing their activities, and I can still see that while I'm having this discussion and conversation with this group. Does that mean that everybody in the class gets to hear that? No. But are they really hearing it in a traditional lecture necessarily if they're not engaged? So, must-haves for blended learning. Here's our definition of blended learning. First part is you have to have technology part of the time. That's one of the ingredients that we're going to blend. And it doesn't have to be the whole time, just part of it. It does have to be kind of a substantial thing. It can't be like do a discussion on Canvas and then the rest of the time you don't even go back to that. If you're going to have a discussion on Canvas, then do a time pair share or do something else that makes it meaningful for what you're talking about. And then maybe after you do that time pair share, you go to another technology piece and then you go back to an interactive thing. Second thing is students have control over the time, place, path, or pace. So at some point during your activities, the kids need to be able to pick either how long it's going to take them, where they're going to do it, if they can do a different activity before they do this other activity. Some people do a totally flipped classroom. I don't know anybody in the district, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Where you literally film a video and students watch it at home and they come in and do an activity. I prefer to do that kind of in class, but there are examples K-12 of teachers who are doing that. And the third thing is it cannot be totally technology. Otherwise, it would just be technology learning. So you have to build in that student interaction, that human interaction piece. And that can be whole class, that can be teens, that can be partners, whatever. I think Kagan is a really easy way to do that, but there's lots of ways to do it. Ways to do blended learning, pretty much anything that fits that definition. Like, think outside the box. Honestly, why do we even have to have a box? So whatever feels organic to you, do. Some great starting places, if you're kind of not sure where to start, I think stations are a really easy way to get started. You can have a few technology stations. A flipped lesson, where you literally take a normal lesson and just flip it, meaning you're recording it, putting it in a video, and they're doing the same things they would do if it was like a whole class lecture. And then the third one, I love Nearpod. Works really great with whole group instruction, and Beth, 7th grade science, great resource. Email her. She's doing a Nearpod thing today. It's a really cool feature. Just to be really clear, blended learning is not just watching videos. That is so boring. Just because it's on a computer does not mean a student will be engaged. They're past technology kind of being a like, oh yay, we get to use a computer today. They don't care about that anymore because they get to use them all the time. I mean, especially our middle school and high school. And I mean, they have a cell phone, they have a computer with them all the time. So the interaction with the technology and making that video not boring. And sometimes we have to evaluate ourselves. I think that what's on the screen should change quite a bit for them. And just make sure that you build in that formative time, because students want to know what they know and what they don't know and get better at that. So if you don't build in formative time, then they're not as engaged because they don't know if they know it or not. So engaged learning, that's our key. I use the videos as a starting place, and then the learning comes from doing the activities after that video. So the video helps me with that differentiation, the engagement, and as a great resource afterwards. But I have to be really careful that when they're watching that video, they're active learners. And I kind of hinted at that before. Here's kind of a breakdown of what I mean by an active learner. So here's my student in pink. They're watching a video. And all of a sudden that video is going to pause because I have a setting and option that I can make it do that. And it's going to ask a question. And they have to answer that question. Now, some of them will be able to answer it without rewinding the video. A few of them, and quite a bit of them, will not be able to. And their first instinct is going to be to raise their hand and say, I don't get it. And I'm going to say, rewatch the video. And I'm going to get eyes rolled at me, but they're going to rewatch the video. And a lot of them, after they've rewatched it one time, will be able to answer that question perfectly. Some of them will raise their hand again and say, I still don't get it. And I will say, rewatch the video. I make them rewatch that video twice, at least, before they get to ask me. Because usually, if they've watched it twice, they don't ever put their hand back up again. If they're putting it up for a third time, that may mean that they really don't get it and I need to help them. But when you're first starting out, they don't know how to actively watch, so you kind of have to make them, and that's what I do. But after they have rewound the video and answered the question, I can go into my program, or I can look at their piece of paper or whatever, and review the answer in real time and give them feedback like, you need to fix this, or this part was right, but maybe not this part. Let's think about that. They can rewind and make corrections. If it's good, they get to move on. Or I can have a reteach conference, and that day, while they're working on it, correct their learning, because practice makes permanent, and I don't want them to practice in their head something that is not correct. This is one of my examples. If you have the presentation, you'll be able to watch that. I will put the link in as option question 2. This is a YouTube video I made of how to create the video. I will link that here, and I'll just go right into it in this caption.